The following selection is a presentation I like to give in workshops about the systems view of life. I include it here not in order to suggest that you teach people systems theory, but because it can enrich you personally. For this illustrates the scientific understanding of the radical interrelatedness of all life that is basic to the shift in consciousness of our time and an essential part of the great turning. Here in this footage you will see how it is the third movement of the spiral, which we call Seeing with New Eyes, and you will see how it flows from the earlier parts of the spiral. I want to share with you some of the brain food that has been so important to me. Because it's not enough. Working with the emotions is not enough. It's not enough to feel. You've got to think. Because there are times when the feelings will abandon you. Your hope will abandon you. Your compassion will abandon you. There are times you dry up. And then it's so good to have ideas, because this is a time of cognitive revolution. And perhaps the most telling part of that cognitive revolution is in our concept of power. Power is interesting to look at because it has metaphysical roots. How we understand what power is based on how we see reality structured. So there were two basic ways of seeing reality that came up for our culture millennia ago, 3,000 years ago, in ancient Greece. And one view said, everything flows, everything is changing all the time. Dynamic flux, you can't enter the same river twice, and that was Heraclitus. And he had images of water and fire, of constant transformation, and that's kind of unsettling. So the vote went to the other view, which was that of Parmenides and other philosophers associated with him, which said, oh no, reality is made up of things and pieces and entities. Substance, not flow. That's what's really real. It's what's solid. And so the view grew up that reality is made up of things. So we can draw that and represent, these could be molecules, atoms, cells, rocks, trees, plants, nations. And that notion has characterized mainstream culture and classical science in our world. That's the basis of our civilization. Then if you were an Aristotle, putting things in categories and classifications, which is very useful, that's the assumption that reality is constituted of things. And if you were Newton or Galileo, measuring the trajectories of objects and their impact on each other and the laws of motion, that's what the assumption was. And so we got the idea that you could understand the universe or nature by analysis, by taking it apart, breaking these pieces down into the basic building blocks. This is a stuff-based view of the universe. And this is very useful. We found out a lot. But we tended to ignore the fact, all but ignored, that there were things happening between the things. There were relationships, and there were communications, there were messages, there were influences, there were effects. We all but ignored that. And there are many consequences to this. As you can imagine, if you think that what you're trying to find is the building blocks of nature, and so the main activity is to take things apart, we're really feeling that in our planet, in our nuclear policy, and in our psyches. But let's look at what it means for the notion of power. Power, then, is what one thing can do to another thing. That's what it is. And what can it do? It can push it around. Sit over there, please. Get over there. Exert its will. Tell it what to do. So you go back home and look it up in the dictionary, and likely as not, the definitions will feature domination, subordination, mastery, reducing the choices of another. This is how we've understood power, by and large. So let's just look for a moment, because we're going to see what the revolution has been here, but let's just look for a moment at some of how this has played out for us. The connotations that this has brought, the attitudes and behaviors. So this notion of power as domination, we could call power over. So what are some of the characteristics? This has conditioned. We've been conditioned by our language and our institutions by this notion of power.
Competition, scarcity.
You've got it. Power is a property, then, something you can have. There's a key feature. In this case, so I have power here. It's my power. And I want to have more than you so that I can push you around. Because if you have more than me, you can push me around. So that there's always a competition. And if it's competition and scarcity, it's because this is essentially a zero-sum game. It's sort of like a seesaw. And I'm sitting down here, and you're sitting up there. And if you go up, I have to go down. We have barely begun to explore and examine what this does to the psyche. Needing to compete in order even to stay where you are. It's a wonder we're not nuttier than we are. And you know, one thing in power, you can impinge on another, you can make it do what you want, and sometimes that means pushing around and you can damage. Or you can shatter it in 1,000 pieces. So if this is me, because this, by the way, is the model for the self. This is how we see separate individual selves in this view, in this worldview. Well, if this is me, I don't want you to push me around, and I don't want to be shattered and damaged. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build defenses. Oh, you bet. I'm going to take care of myself. So I'm going to create a wall around me in heavy armor so I won't be vulnerable. So this notion of power is conflated with being invulnerable. Do you follow this? Follow the logic of that? There's a requirement in order to exert this power, you have to be more invulnerable than the next guy. You must be, sort of in philosophic terms, it's just fascinating. You move back to being the unmoved mover. with your own strategy clear and your own vulnerability hidden, if it's there at all, and you don't allow yourself feeling responses, you're above feeling. I am so powerful that I can watch anything without a tremor. I am so powerful that I will not change my mind. I mean, I grew up with that. And I'm not the only one here who did. So you have all the power of a steel trap that's closed. So here again, there is power with stasis, power with the unmoving. You know, even it gets into theology. I was raised a Presbyterian little girl, and I learned the Westminster Confession, and I think it was in all branches of contemporary religiousness. God was seen as almighty, eternal, omniscient, and immutable. I believe in God the Father. It's always a He. He is so powerful that He cannot change. That's pathetic. Because nature changes. This natural system of the living world is able to self-organize and self-sustain and stabilize and evolve through continuous changing. Life is change.